Thank you everyone for coming and those online too. We have a very exciting presentation today. Janet and Maren are both in food science, and you are a registered dietitian, and Maren is a PhD candidate. And Janet actually is very exciting. What I love best about their class is that they are getting undergrads to think about how they can better themselves and their professional opportunities early on in their career. So while they still can do something about it, and I really value that aspect of the courses that you take. So writing personal statements, researching internships, looking at where your value is and how you can improve it. I think that really brings, adds a different dimension to most of these classes that I have seen. So thank you.
And our new mom, Maren, needs to get home to baby about 3 o'clock. So we'll go kind of quickly and then come back into questions so that you get to see ThinkSpace and get to see the process. So Maren and I thought we'd kind of tag team it today. And this is a class for juniors. It's the foundations course or the first course that they take in the professional series. And they're on their way to become a registered dietitian. And so Samantha and Maren, I should say, have been collaborators with me probably 3 years now, and this is the second year that we have been working with ThinkSpace for them to do a personal statement in ThinkSpace. And I would have to say, I guess, over the course of my career anyway, I think anytime you're faced with that blank piece of paper and you're applying for a job or promotion or it's a volunteer opportunity, something where you have to write about yourself without coming across as overly self-involved or overly confident, but portraying enough confidence, I think is among the most difficult writing. So this is what we are challenging the juniors with in the dietetics program, because they will use that for application into supervised practice. So I'll let Maren explain a little bit about what that process is like.
Yeah. So the process to becoming a dietitian, a few steps here to walk through. So 2 different options, and the option that we have here at Iowa State, thank you, is the option that you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen there, completing a bachelor's degree program in dietetics, followed by a dietetic internship. So the bachelor's degree program has set requirements, a certain number of courses in biology and biochemistry and nutrition assessment and medical nutrition therapy, food service management, variety of different coursework. And at that point, students receive what's considered their didactic program and dietetics verification statement that allows them to proceed with the dietetic internship, which is a program that they have to apply for. It's very, very competitive. I believe the match rate is typically around 50% or so across the United States. Apply and get matched to an internship, and the rest, unfortunately, have to try another time or consider some other options. So, in applying for this dietetic internship, it's really important that the materials that they present are very strong and a good representation of themselves in order to get matched to a dietetic internship. And then, after completing their internship, they are able to take the exam to become a registered dietitian, the national exam, to earn their credential. And I will say, again, the dietetic internship is a little bit different than other career fields where perhaps you can apply to a certain company or something of that nature just for any sort of internship. It's a very set number of hours that are to be completed and competencies and standards for that.
So the personal statement is their opportunity really to stand out in that application. The rest of it is probably pretty standard in terms of transcripts, GPA, references, but the opportunity to really make an impression on a selection committee, we think, happens with the personal statement. So this is an assignment that they have done on paper for many years, and in collaboration with Holly and what they use in preparing future faculty, we've been able to better up on that process, I think, over the last 3 years. So what they do is I participated in team-based learning through SELF, and we have them in teams, and we call that the Internship Selection Committee. So now they're in teams of 4 to 5, and they're going to select who is going to be in the internship. And so they do some research assignments about internship, and they work on their resume, and then the personal statement is part of that also. So what ThinkSpace has allowed us to do is look at more drafts of a personal statement asynchronously, rather than bringing paper copies into the classroom and they made all of their comments on paper. So now they do that outside the classroom, and they can bring their laptops in and make their comments online. That has been really, I think, well received by students. And we've seen course evaluations increase. I've seen a lot more comments from students as to, I think there's more willingness now to critique, to offer some constructive criticism to their peers, to do more than just saying good job or great. I think we're seeing an improvement, I guess, in the quality of the writing and the quality of the statement. Anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so. Yeah, just I think maybe on the next slide we just mentioned just the challenge of not having enough time in class, and it's something that I think the students really enjoy and value that feedback from one another, perhaps more so than from an instructor. So having the capability to do that, like you said, outside of classes made a big difference. Yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing that has happened since we've moved it into more of a ThinkSpace environment is they're actually coming to class. Last year in particular, we had no one absent. They were anxious to get that feedback from their team, versus maybe they didn't do it, they didn't want to show it, they didn't want to bring those paper copies in. I felt like that was really telling. The other thing that I have found is ThinkSpace, they really had no technology issues with it. Maren and Samantha were probably more the operational people as to how that happened, but you can comment on that. We really didn't have any issues.
No, and that was, Janet had mentioned previously, the students had done everything on paper, and we hadn't had them bring laptops to class, so we just didn't even know if that would be an issue, and not an issue at all. Everybody had a laptop and was really good about bringing that to class, so we did not have any technology barriers there.
So we'll move on to the next slide. And certainly our challenge in this assignment is the anxiety producing aspect of this, partly because it's so competitive in terms of applying to these programs. But I would also say I think there's just a certain amount of anxiety that goes with as they approach now graduation. They're still 18 months out, but as they're making that transition into young professional, I think the simulation ability in something like ThinkSpace, we haven't tapped into that maybe as well as we could, but I think there is some opportunity there just to look at anxiety levels and this help bring that down, because it's all a new experience for them as well as skill development. So that has been the challenge over the years, and I think the other thing I would say about it is it has been difficult in the past to look at their draft, and as instructor, you find yourself almost making so many comments that now did it become really their work, or have you altered it so much in your comments as the instructor that it's no longer really their work? So I think there's a lot of value in the peer review and the willingness then to make revisions. Sometimes students are not as willing to revise papers. This seems to have helped. We talked about we had implemented a flipped classroom and we were doing more with small learning approaches, but we probably spent the most time with the personal statement and the limited in-class time, of course, for peer feedback. So we had more structure, gives them better use of time. We have run out of time both years, even with ThinkSpace. It's hard for them, I think, to stop. They really enjoy reading each other's work, applying it to their own. Sometimes students will have comments about needing to up their own game, having looked at what some of their peers have written. So I think it challenges them both scholastically and probably professionally also. Okay, so I'm going to let Maren show you what it looks like.
So we'll go into our case here and just kind of walk you through what this looks like. The way that the personal statements work is that there's a series of, it's 4 questions total, right? That every student is asked to respond to with their personal statements for applying for dietetic internship. And so the questions are, why do you want to enter the dietetics profession? Discuss experiences that have helped to prepare you for your career. What are your short and long-term goals? And what are your strengths and weaknesses or areas needing improvement? So again, those 4 questions for the personal statement. And so what we strive to do with ThinkSpace then was to turn those questions into prewriting exercises for the students to complete. And previously, again, they had done that with paper. And I don't know whether they had a sense before that it was that they would be using it. No, they didn't have a sense before that they would use those writing materials for their personal statement. It's just more of a exercise. They come to class and Janet asks them to pull out a piece of paper and spend a few minutes writing their thoughts about the questions. So instead now we have cases set up. So basically we just have each of those questions then set up as a reflection. The students would complete one by one in class. Usually we had them do 2 each day, the first 2 days of class. And so we give them about 5 minutes and encourage them to write as fast as they can and don't stop. And I think that itself is a good experience for them. And I think, again, by moving it to the computer, a lot of them are able to move and think and write a lot faster than they would by paper. And so I think their writing volume has probably increased as well. Well, we don't have measurement for that, but just by observation, I would estimate that. So then after they submit the 4th reflection, then it takes them to the next, which is a phase that pulls forward their responses then from each of those rewriting exercises into basically a template of their personal statements. And they're usually quite surprised and excited that a lot of the work has already been done for them and they didn't even really have to think about it. So then what we encourage them to do is to copy this into a Word document and then spend some more time revising that. Granted, they were free-writing, so not everything is going to be perfect in what they were writing, but there are going to be a lot of really good pieces in there or things that they may want to go back and expand upon and whatnot, just clean up a little bit. But they usually are very pleased with what they see, and a lot of the work's already been done.
Can I show Caitlin?
Sure. Yeah. So I think Kajal's going to pull up an example from a student that we had got permission from.
I just wanted to show you what carry forward looked like. So these were all the discrete fields that they had filled out in the phases before, and that's now been pulled forward into one document. And that's what we call carry forward. So the student input comes back to them so that they can build on it and reflect on it and change.
So yeah, after they have completed this, then and copied and downloaded and edited, then we have them upload another draft as a PDF that then their team members can go into ThinkSpace and review and comment on and provide feedback. Will comments show up then?
Because I'm in as instructor, the comments will show up.
So again, previously, students had just brought paper copies of their draft to class, and then they would still sit in their teams, but usually they maybe got through a couple paragraphs of each person's personal statement to get to read the whole thing just due to time that it would take to read in class. Whereas now, with it being on ThinkSpace, they're able to do this outside of class, provide feedback, and then when they get to class for the in-class writers workshop, then they have a lot more time to spend providing further feedback or clarifying what they meant in their comments, or just discussing perhaps what they're hoping to improve upon or things they liked from one another. So we do that a lot too. And then after the writer's workshop, then they go and edit a little bit more and hopefully improve things a little bit more, and then upload their final draft back into ThinkSpace.
I can't show this in the document.
Oh, yeah.
It won't come.
It won't come. Oh, okay. That's okay.
Oh, because it's a Word document, a PDF.
Yeah, to download it.
Do you have anything you want to add about the process?
Well, I think it's been fun always, but probably more fun in this format for them to see the big reveal. This was the first year that a couple of them caught on to, hey, wait a minute, is this really going to be the personal statement? Because they are seeing it in smaller segments, smaller pieces, and I think you get less of a template or canned sounding personal statement at the end. And I think their own personalities start to shine through, and I think that's really critical to how they proceed forward also. So, and we've had a lot of fun with it, and the students have enjoyed it. We have certainly had groups of students that chose to keep going with it. This kind of became their little support group, and so they were showing more versions to each other later on. So when they actually do get ready to apply in 18 months, at least they have a draft or a start. I think that releases or reduces some anxiety for them also. I think the writer's workshop format that Holly coached us with has been a lot of fun for them and been productive as well. And the free writing piece has been really interesting to watch them develop that. We do some things in food science and human nutrition over the last year with peer observation in the classroom. And one of the other professors was in the classroom to see ThinkSpace this year, and she commented about their ability to write at any place. And I hadn't thought about that before, but I thought, that's really true. I'm not a person who would choose to write in a coffee shop. I think I have to be in a quiet environment, and I think that sort of classroom environment was showing us both that you really don't have to be, and they were able to sit in the classroom and write pretty effectively and use that outcome. Any other comments you would say or any other observations?
So what kind of interaction did you have with the instructors, with the students, as TAs, and when did you get to bring in your perspective into it?
I mean, throughout the course, Samantha and I were able to share our experience going through the dietetic internship and applying the process. But I think the thing that was neat for me was just, it was a little bit more hands-off at this point, and we got to see them working together more. Of course, we're there to provide any answers to questions or feedback if needed, but really, I think they enjoy feedback from one another probably more so than from us as instructors. So, yeah, I don't know that I answered your question really, Kajal, but.
No, you did. I want to know, like, how comfortable were you going hands-off?
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it was so encouraging and powerful to see the types of feedback that they were giving one another, and that they were enjoying the process so much. Everybody was really engaged in the class, and sometimes the students have laptops. They might be thinking about trying to do some other things, but that really wasn't the case. They were very active in ThinkSpace and providing feedback to one another. So that was nice to see. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah. Chris, my heart is overflowing. This is just really wonderful. I mean, I think when we were first sitting down and working this out, we were thinking about, well, PFFers are usually not competing for the same job. And, we had worked it out for PFFers when you took it and that whole exchange during class. And I think one of the concerns might be that since the dietetic students were going for the same internship, would there be that, barrier to wanting to help somebody because they're competing for the same spot? You're not seeing any of that, I take it.
I would say more so in the past than what we see now. I think moving to the team-based learning where they get to know their peers a little better, going through this exercise. And I think there's an increasing realization then that maybe everybody doesn't quite want the same thing. Some people are applying for graduate school. Some may have decided, I don't know that I'm going to be a dietitian. Maybe I want to be a physician assistant, an optometrist, have to go on to dentistry. I think it helps, the whole process probably helps them distill a little bit more about what is it do they really want, or why do I want this. So I think it's actually improved some of that closely held competitiveness. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do because you might want to do it too. I think it's relieved some of that.
That's beautiful. Wow. That's a really neat unintended consequence. Yeah.
And I think with the dietetic internships, they each can have a different focus or emphasis. And so I think definitely there's a wide variability among the students of what their interests are. So whether somebody wants to go in community nutrition or medical nutrition therapy or food service, there's variety there. So I think that helps a little bit, but also I even remember seeing at least one or two comments similar to what you were saying about the team-based learning, that they really appreciated getting to know their classmates more, but they hadn't really had the opportunity to do that in their courses, I know. So I think there is that level of comfort there, and more so knowing and being able to share with one another when they feel more comfortable, like you were saying. Yeah.
Well, I think we see probably more self-efficacy, perhaps, or a little bit more self-direction as a result of going through some of these exercises or being in a group. Hopefully there's more accountability then, because they've been accountable to each other. Kind of what we talked about before, they came to class prepared and they knew their peers were going to read that personal statement, and I think they probably took a different level of detail or care that maybe didn't exist the way that we were doing it before. And I really was impressed with the kinds of comments, the professionalism that they gave to each other's work. I mean, they took it very seriously, very sincerely, and you would hope that that translates into a success level, or everybody's vote comes a little bit higher, that they all can receive an internship, so, or potential anyway for higher placement.
Is there any difference between the teacher vote between before and now?
I would say I'm not making as many comments. I'm still looking at all of them in the final version, but yes, I'm seeing a better product than what I was seeing initially.
So it took you less time to
Took
build
me
a better
less
product?
time, yeah.
Both of those things. I mean, if you wanted to, I don't know what you're putting in these recent posters and stuff, but those would be a couple of huge outcomes. The fact that students are feeling closer, they're exchanging more, you're spending less time with the administrative overhead.
Not that I had a red pencil, but I don't think I'm marking them up as much as I used to either.
And then do you mark up on ThinkSpace as well, or do you do it in a different format?
I don't mark it in ThinkSpace because I grade in Blackboard, so what I see is they've uploaded their final into Blackboard and I'll make comments. We use a rubric in Blackboard and approach it that way.
So, if you don't mind, I could share your poster.
Yeah.
Draft. So we could look at that. So this is what they are. So they are going to the FNCE, Food and Nutrition
Conference and exhibit.
Conference and Exhibit, and they have been accepted in the innovative section, innovative teaching section. Oops.
Do you want to put it on presentation mode? Does that help? Yeah, that was good.
And this is where I was thinking of sketchnoting.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So do you want to talk at all about the statistical differences?
Sure. So the results section there is basically what our last few slides were anyways. Just to share, really what we looked at was the student evaluations in terms of the standard questions that they're responding to, but then also their comments that we're providing as well. And so we looked at the question, overall, this course has been effective in advancing my learning. And so the difference between 2014 and 2015 is statistically significant, and that was when the change of adding the flipped classroom took place. And then 2016 is when we added the ThinkSpace, and so the standard deviations are lower between 2015 and 2016, suggesting more agreement among the students than the previous 3 years. And from what I remember, there's not a statistically significant difference between 2015 and 2016, even though there's slight decreases there. But from the student evaluation comments, these were just reading up. We had almost a dozen comments of that specifically mentioned ThinkSpace or the team-based learning. And so a couple we had here. I enjoyed being able to peer review other students' personal statements because it gave me a better understanding of how to write my personal statement, and I received very good constructive criticism on how to better my personal statement. I liked doing the peer review outside of class so that we had time to give thorough feedback rather than being rushed. Another student said being able to give feedback via ThinkSpace on my personal statement was very helpful in developing a better final draft. And then one other comment, a flipped classroom has really been beneficial in understanding the process of how to apply for a dedicated internship. It has also helped me to get to know my other peers as I have in my current classes. So overall, the comments were very, very positive, and even just other things that we heard from students in class anecdotally. They really enjoyed the process, I think. I don't know if you have any thoughts on any differences this year, or has the classroom setup been better for that?
We have an active learning classroom this year. The photo that you're seeing on the poster is well, how we did it on paper, and you can see that they're in a room that we didn't have movable chairs, so you worked probably more in pairs than they did as a group. But the ThinkSpace certainly helped with that atmosphere. So next week is when they do their writer's workshop and bring their first draft for their peers to look at. But we do have classrooms that is a lot more conducive, I think, to conversation and to working as a group, looking over each other's shoulder with their laptops and so on.
You might explain what a writer's workshop.
Oh, okay. Well, Holly, jump in here if I get it wrong. But the writer's workshop is that ability to share with your colleagues what you've written, accept their criticism, their constructive comments to you, go back and revise again, and talk about it some more as a group. Anything you want to add, Holly?
Well, this actually was brought to my attention by Karen Goldenmeyer, who is she's a program coordinator in SELT, and she's done a lot of work with University of Iowa's Writers World Famous Workshop, where groups of writers sit in a circle and they bring their work in. And so we do this, they've already commented on the drafts in ThinkSpace. And so you sit in a circle, and in PFF, there's circles of 6 students usually. And so we all bring up the same person's draft, and the person can see all the different person's comments on it. Each person can only see their own comments. And so if we were a circle, each person would have 1 minute to explain to me their comments. And then so Maren would say, oh, I really liked how you did this, and I think you should have improved this. And then Janet would go, well, I agree with you, Maren, on this first point, but I really don't agree with you on that second point. And once both of them had a minute each to explain their comment, we'd go to Kajal. Meanwhile, I would have to pretend like I have invisible duct tape over my mouth, because if I interrupt you, that's going to interrupt the flow, and it's not going to have that nice exchange. So I just have to take notes during this time. So since they're 6-person teams, we have 5 minutes to get around the circle. For me, then I get 2 minutes to ask questions, clarify, rebut, whatever. But since this is a personal statement for dietetics or job materials for PFF, I get to take or leave your comments. This is a bigger purpose. So there's no forcing me to take it, but I'd be wise to consider your comments, because a hiring committee or an internship committee is going to be very, have a lot of eyes on it. And so you want to make sure that you're sort of paying attention and not getting tunnel vision. And then you take those, you go home, you upload another draft with those that you're going to incorporate. And then we move on to Maren, for the next one, and we do that whole circle thing. And it usually takes about an hour to get through that in a workshop, which is a nice, class period. And then, everybody goes home and uploads the next draft. In PFF, then we have the Center for Communication Excellence come in and do a similar thing. I was thinking, if you wanted, we could interest the Writing Center to do something like that. The Center for Communication Excellence has been really enthusiastic about this, and they'll either meet in person or they'll meet over Zoom. And then once they put their comments on it, so they have a number of different people that will look at it. There's graduate students that have been trained in disciplinary writing. They're embedded in classrooms all around the campus. And they're trained by the Center for Communication Excellence. And they will come in and talk, mechanical engineering has a couple, ag and biosystems engineering. Food science does as well, don't they?
This is an undergraduate course.
That's for PFF. So I'm saying that we could do a similar thing with the undergraduate writing center for yours, if that would be helpful. But it's been super helpful. And then they also have a mentor, and so the same thing. Then after they incorporate the Center for Communication Excellence, then they have a mentor out in their field, as you did, and then they give discipline-centric comments. And so you get this multiple iteration of drafts, and by the time I get to see this. And so Maren is one of our superstars, so really, really impressed with her work.
So a question I had with regard to this iterative writing, you did mention that this was a pass-fail class, right?
This is pass-fail class.
And so students didn't mind the second draft upload, like you have it now in 2 assignments. Is it now was too much work for a pass-fail class?
No. What would you say?
That's awesome.
No, they're focused on their own professional development, and I think that probably has been one of the benefits. In my past experience, I would say students are kind of resistant to making other drafts. Not because it's a pass-fail class, but they would just like to turn in the first draft and I'm done getting to revise materials. I think it's difficult, and certainly they respond differently to their peers.
And I don't particularly love to sit there and do that sort of editing on people's. It's not my strength. As a veterinary pathologist, I mean, it's just not something I was either trained for or went into the field because of. And so for me, it was like a huge relief that I knew that they were going to get good comments on their work. And they actually, I think, the results are so much better than if I would have done this anyway. And that accountability to get the multiple drafts is such an important pedagogy. But the fact that, I mean, I get the same thing in PFF that you got as, oh, that's so inspiring that you did it that way. Can I use that in mine? And so they don't feel like that, oh, you can't do that because.
And so that's interesting too, because we've had this conversation before, and of using this kind of peer review and writers workshop, and much of the pushback involves undergraduate students copy. Would they be copying others? And then Holly can't really say because she deals with graduate students who are at a different level of sharing. But that was, and so you haven't had that problem as this case. It's not been that they are worried about sharing each other's.
I think initially that anxiety is wanting to see, maybe in the same way you'd like to have a template for a resume, you'd like a template for I'll just fill in the personal statement, just give me the template. And I think this forces them in another direction through ThinkSpace. And the free writing, then they came out with their own statement, which becomes the template, but it's personal to them rather than following somebody else's. What would you think?
But I've loved this insight of yours. I think this is a beautiful, beautiful insight. And all these things that are coming out right now, I'm seeing a manuscript that you've got to write on this because there's so many important things that are coming out here. I think the difference, Kajal, in what I'm hearing from the folks that are pushing back is maybe they're giving an assignment on you have to write this certain paper on this certain theme. And I don't want anybody copying anybody's. Whereas in both the personal statement that you're doing and the job materials that the PFFers are doing, they have their own higher purpose. It's not just writing on that particular theme. And so I think that may be a difference, but I'm wondering if there's a way that things can be assigned that it sort of gets away from that objection, that it may be a design issue for the assignment that we need to think through more thoroughly. Because the personal statement and the job materials are all about getting the job or getting the internship, and this is a way to get to that, rather than just to get to a product of a paper. 13th century, blah, 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 you know.
Yeah, it seems like having 4 or 5 different topics and then putting a group together that they all have different topics, because then you'd be able to peer review and learn about 4 other topics. You know,
Jigsaw.
yeah.
The question is this one. Will not have the same assignment.
Yeah, you know, it's they're writing papers on some different things, because that sometimes that jigsawing, I didn't have the time to learn the other material that's wrote. You have the time to peer review, but kind of go back and forth. It could work. But
You've really got some cool stuff here, and I really encourage you. Have you put all that in your presentation materials, these observations that I keep? Because these are rich. What is coming out of here?
We have a 2-point presentation going. So one is their poster. And then they had this brilliant idea of having a video playing which shows the phases and all of that. And that is what I am making. Now I can't share it. I need to connect the tech and have it download. So I have some of it ready. But that's exactly what I was thinking, is that can be a venue where we can put stuff that cannot go on the poster. Or, would be like too much information on the poster or really off. So I started on something, and then I thought, actually for the text and the annotation, what do you want to emphasize? I would actually have to work with you to say, what do you want to emphasize here, which is not in the poster, And I'm having fun doing this because, it's video and all that, and so spending way too much time making it pretty and all that. Please get the thumbs
Thank you,
up.
Kajal.
I mean, this just makes a course, the difference between a course that's boring and just rote and something that's exciting, and when you're seeing your students connect better with each other. I mean, in a big university, we need this connection. I mean, it's why we have learning communities.
Now, in your course, they're not doing grant writing, but how often, when you went to graduate school, any of us were taught how to write a grant?
That's right. Not.
And this is exactly the same thing. So have a team that gets together and writes a grant together, which is what they're going to be doing when they get into the profession. And maybe have another team that's the evaluators.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great. I was going to say, I did take a grant writing course last year, but it wasn't in this format, which I think, as you described it, would be a wonderful experience to be able to do that. Because it was challenging still to not be able to get as much feedback and going through it as they would with this. We didn't really get feedback until the very end. So having more iteration.
And you were an individual who had to write a grant. Right?
Yes. And
You
now
don't do that.
Right. Yeah. Yep. No, I think that would be wonderful.
So that's where we are at, and they have a new project now with internship research. And so that will be, they are testing it this year, and we'll see how that goes.
Internship research.
They have always researched 2 internships and sort of put together their alignment. How well do you match up with the requirements of this particular program? And so Kajal converted us into ThinkSpace this year, and they've had some fun with that.
So this is the one where you have the one where they could probably get at this point, and then this is the one that's a stretch, and what's the gap between? I really like that idea a lot.
And get them to do some gap analysis then. If you were to get your free internship, what would you have to do? And who makes you accountable? And how would you check on that? And they had some good reflections on that.
This is awesome work. I would like to implement it into the food science professional development class. So if you could just let me clone your cases when you're done, that'd be awesome. We're a small group because it was a new course, and so as I build, I definitely need ThinkSpace just because paper for a small class is not a big deal right now with resumes and cover letters. So not quite as detailed as personal statement, but the same sort of thought process in terms of looking at each other's work and trying to give constructive criticism back.
When they're probably applying at some point for summer internships,
Right,
right?
yep,
Industry
yep,
internships.
Yep.
So they'd be doing a cover letter.
Yeah, yep. So that it's the resume and cover letter that they peer review before they turn in a draft.
We are welcome to use the PFF materials as well, because we have them write cover letters, teaching philosophies, research statements, sample assignments, like we've got, so there's a whole variety of, and I recognize some of the prompts that are there.
Yeah.
That are sweet that you use those. But